It is the latest album from In Flames. It's called I the Mask. It is their 13th studio album from the Gothenburg Boys, and I refuse to label them a melodic melodic death metal band now. I still refuse to call them melodic hardcore, but they are not a melodic death metal band anymore. They are more alt metal now. They're more metalcore now. There's going to be a big point I make about this later, but for now, we'll stick to this. It is a follow-up to 2016's Battles, which I did not enjoy. Oh man, I really didn't enjoy that album at all. The songs were hollow, the production wasn't great, the songs themselves were pretty cheesy. And as sad as it is, so I got into In Flames around, or kind of around, Sounds of a Playground Fading. Which, I say that, it was mostly the lead single Deliver Us, which I still think is a great song. I do really, really love that song, excuse me. With Siren Charms, which was the album that came afterwards, I actually really enjoyed that album. It gets a lot of shit online, and it's understandable for people who are fans of OG In Flames, but again, I will have my comments to say about that later. But I thought Siren Charms was really, really fun. Songs like Paralyzed and End of Everything I still listen to them. They're still stuck in my head every now and again. And based on that, and based on Sounds of Playground Fading, Battles was such a come down that ultimately I kind of wasn't bothered when In Flames announced that I the Mask was coming out. And I'll talk about it a bit more later, but I wasn't really keen on I'm Above, to the point where I'm just reading now. This Is Our House came out the same day. I didn't even realise. Now I really enjoy that song. Again, I'll talk about it in build a bit, but yeah, ultimately I just wasn't that fussed. But in the lead up coming up to it, a friend of mine from work was talking about it. More like little clips kept popping up on Instagram and Facebook, so I thought ultimately might as well give it a go. Also, I'm trying to review music now, so it makes sense to have a look at it. Immediately though, from the opening song, Voices, you can tell that the production is a lot better, and it is a lot more inclined to how like Come Clarity and Siren Charms is. I was going to say Playground, but I feel like Playground's a little bit too electronic for that comparison. So yeah, more Siren Charms, more Come Clarity. The guitars sound crunchier, which in turn makes the riff sound so much better. And yeah, so from song one, you can kind of tell it is more, they are trying to bring in more of what they're known for, as opposed to just go for what they are. Also worth pointing out, this is going to be the first album not to have their longtime bassist Peter Ewers, and their first, so he's been replaced by Bryce Paul Newman. And I'm going to talk about the drums a bit in this album. So Tanner Wayne replaced Joe Rickard, not quite sure how to pronounce his last name. And on their Wikipedia it just says drums were handled by Joe, and Tanner was additional drums. So I don't know at what point Joe finishes and Tanner starts, but for the rest of this, if I talk about drumming, it's just going to be the drummer. So who the fuck knows? Yeah, moving on to like the title track. I think the title track on here is the most classic In Flames song they've had since Come Clarity. The bass kick on, or the bass drums on the song really, really make up the song. They really set the pace very, very well. And the multi-layered vocals on the choruses really emphasize that juxtaposition between the harsh and cleans. It's a trope of metalcore, because that's, in my view, what they are now. Yep, it's a trigger point. But yeah, I thought I the Mask, the title song, was really, really strong song, and it's like I said, more of a classic In Flames song. More tea, I'm sorry. And at this point, Anders' voice is probably the best I've heard it, for me at least. It really excels in the opening songs. that continues into Call My Name. He really has to hit those soaring notes, and he does it really, really fucking well. And that continues on, and like it's a similar thing in Follow Me, which is one of the first, it's the first of many, admittedly, but like hard rock ballady kind of songs from the album. And particularly in Follow Me, that last chorus is a seriously powerful performance. It could easily rival a lot of American radio rock performances, which I know is not what people don't want that from In Flames, but why the fuck not? Metal fans are so fucking weird. I've listened to podcasts today where people are always crying out for metal bands to have that more recognition on the radio, and you've got bands like Black Peaks who are doing that, but why can't more classic metal bands such as In Flames do that as well when they can do performances like this? I don't know. What the fuck do I know about? Nothing. But the control Anders has in his voice in this album, I know he gets a lot of flack, and I'm not quite sure. I don't know if it's because I came in for Sounds of a Playground Fading, where he already had, I would say, a fairly decent control on his voice, and I always thought like quite a unique voice at that. But a lot of people find him as like the easy go-to point for criticizing In Flames. I think on this album he is fucking superb. I really, really enjoyed his voice on here. And like I said, I Am Above was the lead single. I was initially a bit unsure. It didn't really do much for me. It has grown on me a bit, listen to it in the context of the rest of the album. I would still consider this one of the weakest songs in the album. I'll go into a bit more detail later, but like the final third or so of the album does drop off. So the first, like up to, I think it's like song 8, are really strong, and I would say this is probably the weakest out of that good portion of the album, which I feel like if they pushed, I think I'm Above got pushed more because it does cater more to that heavy metal sound that people keep crying out for In Flames. But in my opinion, I would have pushed This Is Our House as the stronger lead single. But then, like I said, I've been waxing lyrical about Anders' voice for the entire album, and I will continue to do so for the rest of the review. But In Flames fans are fucking mental. The pre-chorus to This Is Our House, as it happens, and the sounds, oh man, I keep going on, and I'm aware of this, and as I was writing this, I realised I was going on about Anders' voice so much, but outside of the really super cringy lyrics, which again, could rival US radio rock, he sounds so good. It's not a perfect song. I don't like the gang chants. Initially, I thought they were like a kid's chant thing, and it's like Machine Head couldn't do it. I don't think Behemoth did it very well. I just don't think they work well. Like this kid gang vocals. Gang vocals I think only really work for me in like pop punk or punk rock in general. I would happily take them away. And I think in that pre-chorus bit where This Is Our Time, We Won't Back Down, the first time he does it, there's like a gap between the next part, and it's like a more low, I don't really know how to describe it. I guess like more low end, sort of sinister sounding vocal, which is only for like a line or two. But I would have just gone without that and gone from that pre-chorus, This Is Our Time, into the main chorus. So by no means is it a perfect song, but I think it would have done better than I Am Above. And as I said before, the final third of the album is fairly uneventful. The early album has some great riffs and its vocals, blah, blah, blah. The drums are great too, but like I said before, it's hard to tell what's Tanner and what's Joe. The final third, the only thing that really stuck out to me was the pre-chorus of Deep Inside. As a lyric that for ages I kept thinking was Devin Townsend. It's absolutely not, but my god does it sound like him a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, the riffs are quite generic. They lack the earlier oomph from before. Stay With Me does a half-decent attempt at trying to be an acoustic version of November Rain by Guns N' Roses, but yeah, Final Third is it's a bit bland. It's a bit of a drop off for me. Potentially, though, I would consider this the best album since Sounds of Playground Fading. Maybe because I'm not as much as I do enjoy what I've heard of In Flames. I by no means am an expert on their entire back catalogue. This is album number 13. I've still got quite a way to go, but I'd maybe even consider it as good as A Sense of Purpose. This is by far the best Anders has sounded since Come Clarity. He's really found control with his clean vocals. He can really bounce between the harsh and clean so well and so naturally, and he knows not only how to use them, but when to use them, which I think a lot of bands get wrong. Riffs are back up to standard in terms of technicality and just like overall aesthetic sound. But the solos really, Kirk Hammett gets a lot of grief for having like very wah pedal based solos, which I understand. I still really like them because I think there's still enough variety in them. But I kind of get why dedicated guitarists might be a bit irked by it all. This album made me realise that every In Flames solo sounds exactly the same. It's that big like to start with, and then it's just more that is it reverb effect? I'm not a guitarist, but like that like noise, that effect to a guitar. It's just that thing tie away for the solo, and if you want to have that sonic, that key effect for a solo in the same way Kirk Hammett has done, fair fucks to you. Go like live long and fucking slay that shit. But every solo that I can think of from In Flames starts that exact same way. And I just think like by now, especially with a new guitarist as well, or like a newer guitarist compared to Jesper, sorry. You've got that chance to really like just mix it up a bit. That's all I'm saying. It's just all I'm saying. But yeah, it's just me. Thing that I wanted to really hammer home about this album is gatekeepers need to stop labeling In Flames as a melodeath band. And listen to this album and write a review for it. I had to look for other reviews, and so many of them read or started with something on the lines of stray further away from melodic death metal, or former melodeath icons missed the boat with modern metal sound. I'm like, yes, they were melodic death metal. They were one of the key figures from the Gothenburg death metal scene. They are iconic in that regard and should be heralded as such. There's a car alarm going off. But they are not a melodeath band anymore. They haven't really been part of that sound since A Sense of Purpose and maybe even Come Clarity. They haven't been true melodic death metal since Clayman, and that was in 2000. That's nearly 20 fucking years ago. Holy shit, we're all so old. They are a modern alternative metalcore band now, and they should be judged as such. Like for fans of part, I've got Woven War, I've got Light the Torch, and Avatar. But the Woven War and Light the Torch comparison, compare them to those sort of bands and that kind of music. If you say Woven War do it better or Light the Torch do it so much better, then fair fucks, but you are judging them based on that kind of music, not a kind of music that they just don't play anymore. As I was writing this, I ended up coming across an article, like an article headline. Didn't get a chance to read it. And Anders, in an interview with some publication, was saying, we always thought metal fans were the most open or the most flexible when it came to sound. Apparently not. I'm like, you know what? You're fucking right. Because they are still hot. Most people nowadays won't remember. I don't remember what In Flames sound like as a melodic death metal band because I wasn't there for it. But I was alive for it, but I wasn't musically conscious of it. Like I said, my first In Flames album technically was 2014. Siren Charms came out. And I just think we need to start, like, In Flames get the same flack every single album. They're not melodeath anymore. When I was doing research for Come Clarity for Open Mic a couple weeks ago. Oh, stay away from anything made post A Sense of Purpose. Do this, this, and this. Like, they are a different band now. It's only I know none of them are the original band anymore. Like the guys who initially made the album. I think Anders and Bjorn are the longest serving members of the band. But you've got an entirely new rhythm. Well, in fact, no, you do have an entirely new rhythm section that's been there since 2011. They are near enough a new band. They've got a keyboardist in now who obviously purely just live, working with a studio keyboardist for so many years. They are not the Gothenburg patrons anymore. They were, and like I said, we should respect them for what they did, but let's respect them for what they do now. And like I said, if you listen to them and you think they're shit because this band could do metalcore so much better, fair fucks. There probably are metalcore bands who can do it better than In Flames right now. But if you're going to say, fucking Children of Bodom had much better riffs in their melodic death metal albums, like, well, fucking obviously, because they're trying to do something closer to death metal. Ye fucking spanners. But I hope I got the point across. I know I come with bumble a bit because I forgot every single melodic death metal band that ever played music ever. But I haven't heard much from Dark Tranquility. But I've listened to a little bit of Sonic Syndicate was the wrong band I'm thinking of. But either way, I just feel like we need to just get used to what they are now. And yeah, this whole gatekeeping thing is what pushes a lot of people away from alternative music in general. I know the amount of people... I remember, actually, when one of the schools I joined, I bounced around so many, but I was chatting to someone in music and they were saying how, like, what music they listened to. And at the time, and still now to a point, I was a huge fan of Manowar, a power metal band. And I said this to him, whereas, like, the average music fan will not know, odds are, will not know who Manowar are. They are a fairly niche... they are a fairly niche example of a very niche, very niche kind of music. And instead of saying, oh, I'm not a fan of them, but, you know, realizing that this was someone who was kind of more into alternative music, I just got brushed away and saying they were shit. And it's that kind of attitude, and this kind of attitude that happens to In Flames, that will push more people away, and that stops these sort of bands getting played on the radio. And right, mainstream outlets will avoid them at all costs because they've got such a fucking toxic community. I don't know. It's a trigger point. It is a trigger point. I'll happily say it is. But not to deflect away from the new In Flames album. I really enjoyed it. Something, and there's vocals. If you, like I said, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not well versed in this like more modern alternative metal sound that they're going for. So I kind of did compare them to Woven War, lesser extent, Light the Torch, and Avatar as well. Maybe not the latest album, because the latest album wasn't very good. And not Hail the Apocalypse, more Feathers and Flesh, I think. And I really enjoyed that album. So Feathers and Flesh, Avatar, Light the Torch, which is a new album from Howard Jones, formerly of Killswitch Engage, and Woven War, which is was made after Tim Lambesis went fucking insane from As I Lay Dying. I recommend Either Mask from In Flames, and if you don't like it, say you don't like it because they're an alt metal band or a metalcore band. Don't say you don't like them because they're not melodic death metal anymore, else I will club you like a baby seal.